The massive alien ships dropped out of hyperspace like angry metal gods. 200 warships appeared at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could turn planets into glass. Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Fist, watching the human colony worlds spin peacefully in their orbits. Pathetic, he muttered, his four eyes scanning the primitive settlements below. They don't even have proper defensive satellites. The Zephyrian hegemony had conquered 47 star systems in the past century. Their technology was beyond anything most species could imagine. Their shields could stop the fury of dying stars. Their plasma cannons could crack moons in half. And their warriors were bred for conquest from birth. These humans were nothing. Intelligence reports said they had only recently learned to travel faster than light. Their weapons were crude metal projectiles fired by chemical explosives. Their ships looked like flying scrap metal. It would be like crushing insects under his boot. Admiral, his second-in-command, reported. We're receiving transmissions from the third planet. It appears to be their main research station. Put it on screen, Kextar ordered. The hologram flickered to life, showing a human female in a simple blue uniform. She had short brown hair and calm green eyes. She looked completely unafraid, which puzzled Kextar. Most species cowered when they saw Zephyrian warships. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the research station Endeavor, the human said. You have entered human space without permission. State your intentions. Kextar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. His bridge crew joined in the amusement. The audacity of this primitive creature was amusing. I am Admiral Kextar of the Zephyrian hegemony, he replied. We are here to liberate your system from the burden of self-governance. Your people will be relocated to appropriate facilities while we extract the resources this system contains. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. The human woman's expression never changed. She simply nodded as if he had told her the weather. You have 24 hours to leave human space, she said calmly. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. Kextar stared at the blank screen for several seconds, then burst into laughter again. His entire bridge crew was howling with amusement. Did she just threaten us? Asked his weapons officer. I believe she did, Kextar replied, wiping tears from his eyes. How wonderfully absurd. Record this moment for the archives. Future generations will want to hear about the day a human tried to intimidate the hegemony fleet. The next few hours were spent in preparation. Kextar's ships moved into attack formation around the human colonies. His sensors showed exactly what intelligence had predicted. A few small settlements, some mining operations, and that single research station orbiting the system's star. The humans had perhaps 50,000 people total across all their worlds. The Zephyrian fleet carried twice that number in warriors alone. Admiral, the sensor officer reported, we're detecting unusual activity from the human settlements. What kind of activity? Massive data transmissions, energy spikes from their industrial facilities, and the officer paused, looking confused. Sir, they appear to be evacuating their civilians. Of course they are, Kextar replied. They know what's coming. But something nagged at him as he watched the sensor readings. The human evacuation was too organized, too calm. Most species panicked when faced with extinction. They screamed, they begged. They threw their ships at his fleet in desperate suicide runs. These humans were doing something else entirely. Sir, the communications officer reported, we're intercepting human transmissions. Put them on speaker. The bridge filled with human voices, speaking in their strange, primitive language, but the universal translators made their meaning clear. Package Delta is ready for deployment. Stellar Collector at 93% charge. Gate network is standing by. All civilians clear. Initiating Protocol 7. Kextar frowned. Gate network? Protocol 7? These terms meant nothing to him, but the humans spoke them with the casual confidence of people who knew exactly what they were doing. Perhaps, his tactical officer suggested, we should begin the attack now, before they complete whatever they're planning. No, Kextar decided. Let them finish. I want to see what these primitives think they can do against the might of the hegemony. As the hours passed, more strange reports came in. Human ships were arriving at the outer edge of the system, but they were small vessels that posed no threat. Energy readings from the research station near the star were increasing steadily, and those data transmissions continued, sending massive amounts of information to destinations far beyond the system. Admiral, the sensor officer called out. We're detecting some kind of distortion in space near the research station. What kind of distortion? Unknown, sir. It's unlike anything in our databases. Kextar studied the readings. The distortion was growing larger, centered around the human research station. Energy levels were climbing to levels that should have melted the small human facility, but somehow it remained intact. "Sir," another officer reported, "the 24-hour deadline is in 3 hours." "Excellent. Signal the fleet to prepare for final attack. All ships are to target military installations. First, then infrastructure. I want the colonies intact for our use." But even as he gave the orders, Kextar felt a growing unease. He had conquered dozens of species, and they all followed the same pattern. First came fear, then desperate attempts at negotiation, then futile resistance, and finally surrender. These humans were following none of those patterns. The research station continued to orbit the star as if nothing was happening. The colonies were evacuating in perfect order, with no signs of panic, and those energy readings kept climbing higher and higher. "Admiral," his science officer called out, "I'm detecting gravitational anomalies throughout the system. It's as if space itself is being manipulated somehow." "That's impossible," Kextar replied. "No species has that kind of technology." "Sir, with respect, we thought faster than light travel was impossible until we discovered it. And we thought matter conversion was impossible until we created it. Perhaps these humans know something we don't." Kextar dismissed the suggestion with a wave of his hand. His intelligence was perfect. His scouts had observed human space for months. These were primitives with crude technology and simple minds. But as the final hour approached, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a terrible mistake. The human research station was now glowing like a small sun. Energy cascaded around it in patterns that hurt to look at. And in the depths of space, something was stirring. Something that his sensors could barely detect, but that filled him with a primal dread he had never experienced before. "Sir," the communications officer reported. "Incoming transmission from the human station." Captain Chen appeared on screen again. She looked exactly the same as before, completely calm and unafraid. "Admiral Kextar," she said, "your 24 hours are up. You have chosen to remain in human space against our warning. What happens next is on your head, not ours." The transmission ended. Kextar stared at the screen, then at his fleet's impressive displays. 200 warships, the finest technology in the galaxy. Warriors who had never known defeat. But for the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kextar wondered if he was about to learn what real fear felt like. Deep in human space, billions of miles from the Kepler 442 system, Fleet Admiral Marcus Rivera stood in the command center of the dreadnought Retribution. The massive ship hung in the darkness between stars, surrounded by vessels that existed in the nightmares of humanity's enemies. "Sir," Communications Officer Janet Walsh reported. "Priority Alpha message from Kepler 442. Captain Chen reports hostile contact." Rivera's weathered face remained unchanged as he read the brief message. 24 hours until the deadline expired. Zephyrian hegemony fleet estimated at 200 vessels. Standard diplomatic warning issued. "Signal the fleet," he ordered, calmly. "Execute Protocol 7. All ships to Battle Group Omega positions." Around him, the command center buzzed with quiet efficiency. No one raised their voices. No one seemed excited or afraid. This was simply another day at work for humanity's true military force. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the fleet's xenobiologist, watched from her observation post as the human war machine came to life. She had studied 17 different species, but none fascinated her like her own people. Most species fought wars to win territory or resources. Humans fought wars to end wars forever. "Doctor," Rivera called to her, "I want a full analysis of Zephyrian psychology and culture. How will they react when they discover what we really are?" Elena pulled up her files on the Zephyrians, proud warrior race. Technologically advanced, but limited in imagination. They conquered through superior firepower and had never faced an opponent who was truly their equal. "They'll be confused at first," she reported. "Their entire worldview depends on technological superiority. When they realize we've been hiding our true capabilities, they'll experience something their species rarely faces: genuine surprise. And after the surprise? Terror, sir. Complete and absolute terror." Rivera nodded and turned back to his displays. The Zephyrians had made the same mistake every aggressive species eventually made. They saw humanity's explorers and scientists and assumed they were seeing humanity's warriors. The truth was far more complex. Humanity had learned a painful lesson during their first contact with the Krell Dominion 3 centuries ago. The Krell had encountered human trading ships and decided humans were weak prey. They had attacked without warning, destroying 3 human colonies before humanity's real military could respond. When the human fleet finally arrived, they had not simply defeated the Krell. They had made defeat so complete and so horrifying that no Krell ship had left their home system since. The entire species had voluntarily imprisoned themselves rather than risk another encounter with humanity's war machine. Since then, humanity had perfected their approach. They sent their best and brightest to explore the galaxy, to make peaceful contact with new species, to offer friendship and trade, but they also watched carefully for signs of aggression. When a species showed its true nature by attacking the defenseless, humanity's real forces would emerge from dimensions most aliens didn't even know existed. Fleet Status Report. Rivera commanded. Battle Group Alpha through Echo are in position, his tactical officer reported. Gate network is fully charged. Stellar weapons are online. All ships report ready for immediate deployment. Rivera studied the tactical display. Each dot of light represented a weapon of war that could sterilize entire star systems. The Retribution alone carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The smaller vessels were equipped with reality-bending weapons that turned the laws of physics into suggestions. But the real weapon was humanity itself. Every human in the fleet had been trained from childhood in the art of total war. Not just the skill of fighting, but the psychology of ending conflicts so completely that the enemy's children would remember the lesson. Dr. Vasquez, Rivera said, tell me about their admiral. Kextar, wasn't it? Elena pulled up the psychological profile. Classic Zephyrian warrior. Born into the military caste, raised for conquest. He's never faced true opposition. His victories have all been against technologically inferior species. So he's brave? He's never needed to be brave, sir. Courage requires facing something you fear. Kextar has never encountered anything worth fearing. He's about to. On the main screen, the tactical display showed the Kepler 442 system in real time. The Zephyrian fleet maintained attack formation around the human colonies. Their ships looked impressive by the standards of most species, but Elena knew the truth. Those vessels were designed to fight opponents who used similar technology. They had no defenses against what humanity would bring to bear. Sir, the weapons officer reported. Stellar Collector is at full charge. Captain Chen reports ready to demonstrate our hospitality. Rivera allowed himself a small smile. The Stellar Collector was one of humanity's more elegant weapons. To outside observers, it looked like a research station studying the local star. In reality, it was a device that could channel a star's entire energy output into a focused beam, capable of sterilizing everything in its path. The Zephyrians would see what they expected to see. A small research station with primitive sensors and basic defensive systems. Right up until the moment it unleashed the fury of a star against their fleet. Begin final preparations, Rivera ordered. I want this demonstration to be educational. Across the fleet, humanity's warriors made their final checks. Power armor that made them look like mythological demons was tested and ready. Weapons that could punch holes in space-time itself were charged and targeted. Ships that could fold space around themselves like origami prepared to emerge from hiding places the Zephyrians couldn't detect. Dr. Vasquez made her final notes on Zephyrian military doctrine. They preferred overwhelming force applied quickly and brutally. Their tactics assumed their enemies would fight using similar methods and technologies. They had never developed strategies for fighting opponents who could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. Doctor, Rivera asked, in your professional opinion, how many of them will survive the initial demonstration? Elena ran the calculations in her head. Zephyrian ship design, energy output of the Stellar Collector, human tactical doctrine. Perhaps 30% of their fleet, sir, if Captain Chen is feeling merciful. And how will the survivors react? They'll either flee immediately or attack in rage. Their culture doesn't allow for tactical withdrawal. It's either victory or death. Then we'll teach them about a third option. The countdown timer showed 15 minutes until the deadline expired. Throughout human space, other fleets were moving into position. If other species were watching, if other potential aggressors were considering testing humanity's resolve, they would witness something that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. All stations report ready, sir, the executive officer announced. Rivera nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Across hundreds of ships, thousands of human warriors listened to their commander's words. Today we remind the galaxy why humanity's greatest export is peace, he said, calmly. We give aggressors a choice: respect our space and our people, or learn why the universe is safer when humans are left alone to explore it in friendship. He switched off the communication system and turned to Dr. Vasquez. "Begin recording everything," he ordered. "Future generations will want to study what happens when a species mistakes human kindness for human weakness." On the tactical display, the timer reached 0. In the Kepler 442 system, Captain Chen was about to extend an invitation the Zephyrian hegemony would never forget. And in the depths of space, humanity's real military prepared to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of when someone threatened. The explorers and scientists who represented the best of human nature. The lesson was about to begin. The deadline expired at exactly 1427 Standard Galactic Time. Admiral Kextar gave the order to attack precisely 1 second later. "All ships, open fire on the research station. Show these primitives the price of defying the hegemony." 50 plasma cannons erupted simultaneously, sending streams of superheated energy racing toward the small human station orbiting the star. Each blast carried enough power to vaporize a city. Together, they represented firepower that had shattered the defenses of dozens of worlds. Captain Sarah Chen watched the incoming fire from her command center aboard the Endeavour. Around her, her small crew worked with the same calm efficiency they had shown throughout the crisis. "Energy absorption at maximum," her chief engineer reported. "Stellar collector is fully charged." "Target acquired," added the weapons officer. "Fire," Chen ordered quietly. What happened next would be remembered throughout the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. The research station, which the Zephyrians had assumed was protected by primitive shields, revealed its true nature. It was not just studying the star it orbited. It had been built to weaponize it. The station's external hull began to glow as it channeled the star's energy through quantum manipulation fields that bent the laws of physics. The incoming Zephyrian plasma fire was absorbed completely, adding its energy to the growing collection of stellar fury. Then the star itself seemed to reach out toward the Zephyrian fleet. A directed coronal mass ejection, guided by human technology, that treated the universe's fundamental forces like tools in a workshop, erupted from the star's surface. The beam of concentrated stellar fire was narrow, precise, and absolutely devastating. The first wave of Zephyrian ships simply ceased to exist. 47 vessels, including 3 heavy cruisers, were vaporized so completely that their atoms were scattered across the solar system. "Report!" Kextar screamed, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "First attack squadron is gone, sir," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "Complete molecular disruption, no survivors." "Impossible. No species has weapons of that magnitude." But even as he spoke, space around the Zephyrian fleet began to change. Reality itself seemed to twist and fold as dimensional tiers opened in the darkness. Through these impossible ruptures in space-time, the true human fleet began to emerge. The ships that came through defied everything the Zephyrians knew about vessel design. They looked like geometric nightmares crafted by insane mathematicians. Angular surfaces that hurt to look at directly. Hull plating that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Weapon arrays that twisted space around themselves in patterns that made veteran warriors feel sick. Admiral Rivera's retribution materialized directly above the Zephyrian flagship, its massive bulk casting a shadow that seemed to absorb light itself. Around it, dozens of human warships took positions with mathematical precision. "This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Rivera of the Terran Defense Force," a calm human voice announced across all frequencies. "You have attacked a human research facility. This action has moved you from the category of diplomatic problem to military target. You now have 2 choices: surrender immediately, or discover why most species prefer the first option." Kextar stared at the tactical display in growing horror. The human ships were not just advanced. They operated on principles his science officers couldn't even begin to understand. Their energy readings were off the scale. Their weapons seemed to manipulate the fabric of reality itself. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "Our intelligence report said they were primitives." Dr. Elena Vasquez, monitoring the communications from the human fleet, made careful notes about Zephyrian psychological responses. The alien commander was experiencing what her people called paradigm shock, the complete collapse of everything he thought he knew about the universe. "All ships attack formation," Kextar finally roared. "Show them that the hegemony does not surrender." The remaining Zephyrian vessels opened fire with everything they had: plasma cannons, particle beams, Quantum torpedoes and antimatter missiles filled space with devastating energy. It was enough firepower to level continents. The human ships didn't even bother to dodge. Instead, they demonstrated why humanity had become the galaxy's most feared military force. Their defensive systems didn't just absorb the incoming fire. They analyzed it, understood it, and turned it into a teaching moment. The first human vessel to respond fired a single projectile at a Zephyrian cruiser. It looked like a simple metal rod, no different from the primitive kinetic weapons their intelligence had described. But this metal rod was traveling at 97% of light speed. When it struck the Zephyrian ship, the resulting explosion lit up half the solar system. The cruiser didn't just explode. It was converted into pure energy, creating a brief new star that outshone the system's sun. "Dear God," whispered the Zephyrian sensor officer. "What kind of species are we fighting?" The answer came from all directions at once. Human ships opened fire with weapons that redefined the meaning of destruction. Gravitational lances that crushed ships into singularities. Quantum disruptors that made matter forget how to exist. Reality bombs that created pockets of altered physics where the laws of the universe worked differently. But the most terrifying thing wasn't the weapons themselves. It was how precisely the humans used them. Every shot was calculated. Every target was chosen for maximum psychological impact. The humans weren't just destroying the Zephyrian fleet. They were giving a demonstration of controlled power that would haunt the survivors forever. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "we've lost 63 ships, but, sir, they're not trying to kill us all." Kextar looked at the display and realized his officer was right. The human weapons were specifically targeting engines, weapons systems, and command centers. They were crippling his ships without destroying them completely. "Why aren't they finishing us?" he demanded. The answer came from Admiral Rivera himself. The human commander appeared on Kextar's screen, and the Zephyrian admiral got his first close look at humanity's real military leadership. Rivera looked nothing like the peaceful explorers and scientists the Zephyrians had encountered. His face was scarred from decades of warfare. His eyes held the calm certainty of someone who had seen every form of violence the galaxy could offer, and had emerged victorious from all of it. "Because, Admiral Kextar," Rivera said quietly, "we want some of you to survive. Dead enemies can't carry messages, and we have a message for the galaxy." The human fleet continued its methodical destruction of Zephyrian military capability. Ship after ship was disabled, its crew left alive but helpless. The precision was almost artistic in its terrible beauty. Captain Chen, still safely aboard her research station, watched the battle with the detached interest of a scientist observing a well-designed experiment. The stellar collector had served its purpose, demonstrating humanity's ability to weaponize star systems themselves. Now the fleet was showing what human military engineering could accomplish when it stopped pretending to be peaceful exploration technology. "Dr. Vasquez," Rivera's voice came over the communication system. "Are you getting all of this recorded?" "Yes, sir," Elena replied. "Full psychological, tactical, and technological analysis. This will make fascinating reading for future xenobiologists." "Good. I want other species to understand exactly what they're choosing when they decide to attack human civilians." The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted exactly 47 minutes. When it was over, the Zephyrian hegemony's great fleet was reduced to 73 crippled vessels floating helplessly in space. Their weapons were destroyed, their engines were offline, their shields were drained, and they were completely, utterly, helplessly at humanity's mercy. Admiral Kextar sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed his fleet's complete defeat. His warriors, bred for conquest and raised on stories of hegemony and invincibility, sat in stunned silence. "Incoming transmission from the human flagship," his communications officer reported in a barely audible whisper. Admiral Rivera appeared on screen again, and this time Kextar noticed something that chilled him more than all the advanced weapons. The human commander looked bored. "Admiral Kextar," Rivera said conversationally, "I believe it's time we had a proper conversation. Prepare to be boarded. And, Admiral, I suggest you tell your crew to cooperate. We've been very polite so far." The human boarding shuttles approached the crippled Zephyrian flagship like predators closing in on wounded prey. Admiral Kextar watched them on his screens, trying to maintain some dignity, even as his world collapsed around him. The shuttles were small, carrying perhaps 20 humans each. Against his crew of 3,000 warriors, they should have been insignificant. But Kextar had learned to fear human technology that looked simple on the surface. "Sir," his security chief reported. "Shall we prepare to resist the boarding?" Kextar looked around his bridge at his officers. These were the finest warriors the hegemony had produced. They had conquered star systems and broken the will of entire species. Now they sat in their chairs like frightened children, staring at displays that showed weapons beyond their understanding. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think we want to discover what weapons they bring aboard their boarding parties." The first shuttle docked with an airlock near the bridge. Kextar's sensors showed the humans cutting through his ship's hull with tools that made the metal simply cease to exist. No heat, no debris, no resistance. The matter was there one moment and gone the next. Then they came aboard. The human boarding party wore armor that looked like it had been forged in the nightmares of dead gods. Black metal plates covered humanoid figures that moved with predatory grace. Their helmets displayed no faces, only smooth surfaces that reflected the fear in Zephyrian eyes. The lid figure was larger than the others, standing nearly 3 meters tall in his powered armor. When he spoke, his voice was amplified by systems that made it echo from every surface. "I am Colonel James Harrison, Terran Marine Corps. By order of Fleet Admiral Rivera, this vessel is now under human military authority. All crew members will remain at their stations and follow instructions. Any act of resistance will be met with immediate termination." The Marines spread out through the ship with mechanical precision. They didn't search or explore. They moved, as if they had complete blueprints of every Zephyrian vessel ever built. Within minutes they had secured all critical systems and established control points throughout the ship. Kextar realized that the humans had been studying his people far longer than he had imagined. They knew his ships better than his own engineers did. "Admiral Kextar," Colonel Harrison said, approaching the command chair. "Admiral Rivera requests your presence aboard the Retribution. You may bring 2 officers as witnesses." It wasn't really a request. Kextar selected his tactical officer and his chief of intelligence, hoping their expertise might help him understand what the humans wanted. The journey to the human flagship was a lesson in technological superiority. The transport shuttles. Interior looked like nothing Kextar had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of crystallized light. The controls responded to thoughts rather than touch. And the view screens showed space in ways that revealed dimensions the Zephyrian mind couldn't fully process. The Retribution itself was even more intimidating up close. Its hull stretched for kilometers in all directions, covered with weapon systems that hurt to look at directly. Docking bays large enough to hold entire fleets opened to receive the shuttle. Inside, the corridors were wide enough for armies to march through. The walls were covered with displays showing tactical information from across the galaxy. And everywhere, human crew members went about their duties with the calm efficiency of people who controlled forces beyond imagination. Admiral Rivera was waiting in a conference room that was larger than Kextar's entire bridge. The human commander sat at a simple metal table, looking no more concerned than if he were discussing the weather. "Admiral Kextar," Rivera said, gesturing to chairs across from him. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." Kextar and his officers took their seats. The Zephyrian admiral tried to project confidence, but he knew it was useless. Everything about this encounter had been designed to demonstrate human superiority. "You're probably wondering why you're still alive," Rivera continued conversationally. "After all, you did attack a human research facility. That's usually a terminal mistake." "Why are we alive?" Kextar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Because dead enemies can't learn lessons. And we want you to learn something very important about humanity." Dr. Elena Vasquez entered the room, carrying a portable display unit. She set it up on the table and activated it, showing a holographic map of the galaxy. "Dr. Vasquez is our leading expert on galactic species psychology," Rivera explained. "She's going to explain something to you that your intelligence services apparently missed." The hologram showed human space marked in blue. It looked small compared to the territories controlled by major powers like the Zephyrian hegemony. "This is what you see when you look at humanity," Elena said, highlighting human colonies and trade routes, peaceful explorers, scientific research, stations, trading outposts, small colonies on frontier worlds. To most species, we appear to be exactly what we claim to be, curious explorers seeking knowledge and friendship. But that's not the whole truth, Rivera added. The display changed, showing new markers throughout human space, military bases that hadn't been there before, weapon platforms disguised as communication relays, ships that existed in parallel dimensions, technologies that operated outside normal spacetime. "This is what you didn't see," Elena continued. Humanity learned long ago that the galaxy is full of species who mistake kindness for weakness, so we developed a two-tier approach to galactic relations. The hologram zoomed in on several human colonies that the Zephyrians had observed. The people you met first are genuine, Rivera explained. Our scientists and explorers really are peaceful. They really do want to learn about the universe and make friends with new species. But they're also our early warning system. Early warning system? Kextar's intelligence officer asked. When a species encounters humanity, Elena said, we watch how they react to our peaceful representatives. Most species respond with curiosity, caution, or friendship. They get to continue dealing with our scientists and traders. They never see our military at all. But some species, Rivera continued, see peaceful humans and decide they've found easy prey. Those species get to meet a different kind of human entirely. The display showed the battle that had just concluded, but now Kextar could see it from the human perspective. Every move had been calculated. Every demonstration of power had been precisely calibrated to achieve maximum psychological impact. You weren't fighting a battle, Elena explained. You were receiving an education. Every species that attacks humanity gets the same lesson, tailored to their specific psychology and military capabilities. Rivera leaned forward, his scarred face serious. We could have destroyed your entire fleet in the first minute. Instead, we let you see exactly how outclassed you are. We disabled your ships instead of vaporizing them. We captured your crews instead of killing them. Do you understand why? Kextar was beginning to understand, and the realization filled him with a new kind of terror. Because you want us to go home, he said slowly. You want us to tell other species what we saw here. Exactly, Rivera confirmed. Dead enemies can't carry warnings, but broken enemies can become very effective messengers. Elena activated another display, showing Zephyrian space and the territories of dozens of other aggressive species. This is your real choice, Admiral, she said. You and your surviving crews can serve as ambassadors. You'll return to your space, with ships that have been modified to prevent you from ever returning to human territory. Your new purpose will be to warn other species about what happens when you attack human civilians. And if we refuse? Kextar asked, though he already knew the answer. Then you get the one-way ticket we mentioned in our title, Rivera said calmly. Immediate execution, and we find other survivors to carry our message. The room fell silent. Kextar looked at his officers and saw his own thoughts reflected in their eyes. They were warriors of a proud species, but they had been so completely defeated that resistance was meaningless. What would we have to do? He asked finally. Travel throughout your space and beyond, Elena replied. Tell the truth about what you encountered here. Make sure other species understand that humanity's peaceful explorers are not humanity's warriors. We'll provide you with complete records of this engagement, Rivera added. Visual evidence, sensor readings, tactical analysis. Other species will be able to verify that you're not exaggerating or fabricating the story. Kextar realized he was being offered a choice between certain death and a life of service to his former enemies. It wasn't really a choice at all. We accept, he said quietly. Excellent, Rivera replied, standing up. Dr. Vasquez will brief you on the psychological techniques that will make your warnings most effective. We want to make sure your message is properly received. As the meeting concluded, Kextar realized that humanity had not just defeated the Zephyrian hegemony, they had converted them into part of humanity's defensive strategy. The galaxy's most aggressive species would now spend their lives warning others about the consequences of threatening human space. It was, he admitted grudgingly, a masterpiece of strategic thinking, and it was absolutely terrifying. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442, the galaxy had become a very different place. Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his modified flagship, watching another alien world grow larger on his screens. The ship bore the scars of his encounter with humanity, and more importantly, it bore their technology. His navigation systems had been permanently altered, preventing him from ever returning to human space. His weapons had been removed entirely, and his communication systems had been enhanced to broadcast on frequencies that reached every corner of known space. He had become exactly what the humans intended, a living warning. Sir, his communications officer reported, the Hegemony Council is requesting an update on our mission. Kextar nodded wearily. The Council still struggled to accept what had happened to their great fleet. Some members believed his reports were exaggerated. Others thought he was suffering from some form of psychological trauma. A few even suggested he had been compromised by human mind control. All of them were wrong. The truth was much simpler. and much more terrifying. "Open a channel to the Council," he ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the 5 hegemony leaders in their council chamber. Once, these beings had commanded respect and fear throughout their region of space. Now they looked like frightened children seeking reassurance from an adult who could no longer provide it. "Admiral," Council Leader Vexeron spoke first, "we have received reports that the Korath Empire is mobilizing fleets near human space. Are they not heeding your warnings?" Kextar sighed. The Korath were another warrior species, proud and aggressive like the Zephyrians had been. They had listened to his broadcasts, studied his evidence, and reached the conclusion that the Zephyrians had simply been unlucky or incompetent. "The Korath believe they can succeed where we failed," Kextar reported. "They think their quantum, shielding and temporal weapons will protect them from human retaliation." "And what is your assessment?" asked Council Leader Terman. "The Korath will learn the same lesson we did. The humans will demonstrate that their technology makes quantum, shields and temporal weapons look like stone knives and bearskins. The truth was even worse than that. But Kextar had learned to tailor his warnings to what each species could psychologically accept. The full reality of humanity's capabilities was too overwhelming for most minds to process. On his desk lay Dr. Vasquez's briefing materials, teaching him how to communicate effectively with different alien psychologies. The humans had been thorough in preparing him for his new role as their unwilling messenger. The Korath Empire's attack came 3 weeks later. Their fleet was even larger than the Zephyrian force had been. 350 ships equipped with the most advanced weapons their civilization could produce. They had studied every piece of evidence from Kextar's encounter, analyzed human tactics, and developed countermeasures for every weapon system they had observed. It made absolutely no difference. The Battle of Ross 128 lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, the Korath Empire's fleet was reduced to scattered debris and 74 crippled ships carrying traumatized survivors. The humans had used entirely different weapons this time, demonstrating that the Kepler 442 engagement had been just one small sample of their military capabilities. Admiral Kextar received the news while addressing a gathering of military leaders from 12 different species. He was in the middle of explaining why attacking human space was tantamount to species suicide, when his aide handed him the flash report. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings," he said to the assembled crowd, "I have just received confirmation that the Korath Empire has discovered the truth about humanity. Their fleet has been defeated, and their survivors will soon join me in carrying warnings throughout the galaxy." The room fell silent. Several species representatives began entering data into their communication devices, undoubtedly warning their home governments to avoid any action that might provoke human retaliation. Later that evening, alone in his quarters, Kextar reviewed Dr. Elena Vasquez's completed study. She had titled it Anthropological Implications of Defensive Warfare, and it had become required reading at every major alien military academy in known space. The study's central thesis was elegant and terrifying. Humans had evolved a form of warfare that was fundamentally different from anything other species practiced. Where most civilizations fought to conquer territory or resources, humans fought to end the very concept of future conflict. The human military doctrine, Vasquez had written, is based on the principle of educational violence. They don't simply defeat enemies. They create learning experiences so traumatic and comprehensive that the enemy's entire species abandons aggressive behavior. The study included detailed analysis of 17 different conflicts between humanity and aggressive alien species. In every case, the pattern was the same. The aliens would encounter peaceful humans, mistake them for easy prey, attack without warning, and then face retaliation so overwhelming that their entire civilization restructured itself around avoiding future contact with humanity. The most chilling part of the study was its conclusion. Humanity has effectively weaponized the concept of psychological trauma on a species-wide scale. They don't conquer their enemies. They convert them into advocates for human security. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Kextar activated his communication system and saw the face of Admiral Rivera himself. "Admiral Kextar," the human commander said, "I hope your mission is proceeding well." "It is," Kextar replied. There was no point in being anything other than completely honest with these creatures. "The Korath survivors have joined our warning network. 3 other species have canceled planned expeditions into human space after hearing our testimonies." "Excellent. And how are you finding your new purpose?" Kextar considered the question. 6 months ago, he had been one of the most powerful military commanders in the galaxy. Now he spent his days traveling from world to world, warning other species to avoid the mistake he had made. I understand why you chose this approach, he said finally. Dead enemies can't learn. Living enemies who have experienced your capabilities become more effective at preventing future conflicts than any weapons system you could deploy. Rivera smiled, and Kextar realized it was the first time he had seen the human commander show any genuine emotion. Dr. Vasquez said you were adapting well to your new role, Rivera said. She believes you're beginning to understand the deeper principles behind human strategic thinking. That warfare is ultimately about communication, Kextar replied. You don't fight to destroy enemies. You fight to send messages that prevent future enemies from attacking in the first place. Precisely. And what message are you carrying to the galaxy? Kextar looked out at the stars visible through his viewport. Somewhere out there, human scientists and explorers were continuing their peaceful work, seeking knowledge and friendship with species that had learned to respect their space. And in hidden dimensions, human warriors waited patiently for the next species that would mistake kindness for weakness, that the humans they show you first are not the humans you fight, he said quietly. That any species which attacks human civilians will discover capabilities they never imagined possible, and that the universe is safer and more peaceful when humanity is left free to explore it in friendship rather than forced to respond to aggression. Well said, Admiral. Continue your excellent work. The transmission ended, leaving Kextar alone with his thoughts. Outside his ship, the stars continued their eternal dance. But the galaxy they illuminated had been fundamentally changed by humanity's approach to warfare. Species that had spent millennia conquering their neighbors now devoted their energies to exploration and scientific advancement. Trade routes flourished where battleships had once prowled. Young aliens grew up in a universe where aggression against peaceful explorers had become literally unthinkable. And at the center of it all, humanity continued its quiet work of learning about the universe, secure in the knowledge that their approach to defense had created something unprecedented in galactic history. True peace through superior firepower held in reserve. Captain Sarah Chen, still conducting her research in the Kepler 442 system, submitted her final report on the engagement. Her conclusions were simple and profound. The most effective weapon humanity possesses is not our technology, but our patience. We give every species the opportunity to choose peace. Those who choose otherwise learn why the first option was preferable. The research station continued its orbit around the star, its sensors reaching out to explore the cosmos. To any observer, it looked like exactly what it claimed to be. A small scientific facility operated by peaceful explorers. And in the depths of space, Admiral Rivera's fleet returned to its hidden bases, waiting patiently for the next species that would need to learn about the difference between human scientists and human soldiers. The galaxy was quiet, and humanity preferred it that way.